there's a point where you are so stripped down from everything else. Like there's nothing human about you really left other than your spirit, right? And that is what, there's second wins. This is not your second win. This is like this
is where you gotta find your heart.
You.
If you've been following along with the podcast, or even if this is first time you're checking it out, you've probably noticed I've been beginning the episodes with an excerpt from the podcast to kind of set the tone, if you will, of what's going to go down. And this one was actually very difficult. There's usually one that stands out to me, one quote or is something that stands out that I want to use. And this one, there were several. This podcast is with one of my very best friends and one of the absolutely most brilliant people I know, and that is Ashley Grimmel. Check out Podium Dreams on Instagram if you want to just see what kind of badass she is, or this is a dynamic podcast. So when you hear that noise there, that lets you know, if you check this out on YouTube, that there's cool shit to see. That when she's talking about how much of a badass she is, and she really truly is, you hear that sound and you get to see what we're fucking talking about. She is not only a badass physically, but mentally, and as I said before, brilliant. And a lot of this podcast, we talk about health to degrees of cancer or even just well-being, and a little bit of everything in between. Ashley spent many years, and still does, works in oncology with cancer patients, has a long history of cancer within her family, including losing her mother to cancer. Fortunate I got to meet Trish before she passed. Amazing woman. But she's now taken her life and her career to, as she put it in this podcast, saving people from sliding down a muddy slope, which battling cancer and keeping patients alive in the last stages is, I can't think of a better analogy. But she's now taken her life and her career to optimizing life. Not necessarily for those that are sick, but for those that are demanding the most from their brains and their bodies, for optimizing performance and just optimizing life as a whole. We get into some topics that may be considered controversial, but this fucking kills a podcast. That's what we do here. I want to raw, real, no bullshit. We're going to get down into it. And if you listen to the very first, I believe it was episode 0. So the very first recording of Kills It, I said that I wanted Kills It to not just be a hunting podcast, which is a lot of the people I talk to are hunters, or we talk about hunting, but I want to talk to men and women who kill it at their craft. And for the first episode of the new year, what better fitting than to have a female guest on that absolutely kills it, kills cancer, and kills it at life. And one of my absolute best friends. This podcast goes several different directions, but if you've listened to any of my other podcasts, they all fucking do. It's hard to keep me on the rails a little bit sometimes. You know what I'm saying? I really enjoyed recording this. I really enjoyed listening back to it and plugging in all the dynamic features. And I really hope you all enjoy it too. It's something different, and that's exactly what I want Kills It to be. So Let's get to it.
You were born primal. You were born primal.
The fuck's up, y'all? Meyer Assassin. Firing off from, well, usually at the farm in the Free State, but this time firing up at a place where it's really legal to fire up. Gonna have a conversation, good old conversation with a good long-time friend that may or not be an advocate for such things, as well as all kinds of crazy health biometrics and straps and computers and I don't know. Ashley Grimmel.
Hey guys, what's up?
How we doing?
I'm doing really well. I mean, obviously I'm stoked to be here with you, and obviously stoked to be able to fire up freely. It's pretty exciting.
It is, isn't it?
Yep. Never really thought that would be a thing that was legal, but apparently it is.
It is. The world has definitely changed, and we're not even talking about COVID and all that kind of crazy shit. Well, to get you all caught up to speed, guest today, Ashley Grimmel, very close friend of mine, longtime friend. Actually lived in the farmhouse before I did.
Indeed.
Yeah, and still at the farm, seeing your pops roam around, pulling all his equipment, doing all the shit, moving dirt, making acres.
Yep.
And I'm
You
laying
take care
out
of
in the
my
field
family.
killing geese.
And then you go shoot shit.
Yep. So another interesting thing, Ashley, when we met, was a vegetarian.
Actually, I was a vegan. I'm gonna one up you there. I don't even think I had like the dairy ever. Like I was so strict. Like I thought killing animals was terrible.
But you also had a lot of health reasons to where you were vegan. It wasn't just, oh, look at the beautiful
Totally.
little deer out there.
Totally. And I would say I was kind of like an incognito vegan. I never really like threw it in your face or anything like that. I just kind of like, felt like it was a much healthier thing to do. I'd done a lot of research on it, and I had my own health issues. My mom was dying of cancer at the time, and a lot of people in my family died of cancer. So I just thought it was like the thing to do. And honestly, I think it got me to a very healthy spot in my life.
Yeah. Your individual health, your family's health, and basically just the way you've had to adapt has most certainly shaped where you are. I mean, I can kind of imagine you went into the oncology and everything due to, watching your mother battle cancer for, I mean, how long was her?
God, I mean, I want to say it was 4 or 5 years. Like it was kind of a joke. Like the day that she said that she had cancer, I actually laughed in her face because, she had everything under the sun. She'd been sick since I was a child. She's handicapped when I came into the world. And like,
she wasn't even supposed to be able to have kids.
Yeah, I'm a miracle. I always like to remind her of that. But it was weird. Like, cancer is something that's been in my life for almost as long as I can remember. And so like when it came to careers, what was I already obsessed with? Obviously cancer and trying to figure that shit out. And then the other side of it is like, I've always been around sick people. So I went into what I'd always done since I was a kid, is taking care of sick people and figuring out cancer.
I've, known you and your family for years and very closely. And I know what you've kind of always gone through and all, but it's still it hit me a lot different with the realization not long ago when you left Arizona. You still own the home in Arizona at this point. When you left Arizona and you were staying at a family member's in Colorado, and I called you just to see how you were doing, see what was going on. And you said, this is the first day since I think you said 6 years old. This is the first day since I was 6 years old that I don't have someone dying today.
Yep. Or somebody that was on the brink of dying, that was under my care. Yeah.
to hear it like that was just like I knew this of you, you know what I mean? I've known what you've done and everything, but hearing it like that, it was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And I can see why it wore on you. But what you did was amazing. I mean, I remember at one point you told me you're like, I've now cured 4 stage 4 cancer patients.
Yeah.
And not like, you know, they're
in remission. Like
stable,
they were like, you're like 6 some years out.
Insane.
It is crazy. And, you know, you can't even, like, even on this podcast, like I hear you say cured, like I almost like cringe because it's like, shit, you can't even really say that you cured and technically it wasn't me. I had a whole team, medicine, God, universe, whoever, like all these things came together for these individuals. But like, it's pathetic because I hear you say cured cancer. I'm like, oh, this is a podcast. Somebody hears that. We're going to get shut down. Like, this is terrible. Like, there's like a fear of it almost in saying that, which is ridiculous. But,
well,
just out here trying to help
cured
people.
Cancer in these individuals.
Yep.
Let's say
exactly.
that. Because obviously we're not trying to say, oh, you've cured cancer.
Yeah.
And
Semantics.
one of the, yeah, right. And one of the insane things about when you were telling me about some of these different patients and the different methods and everything, it seemed like it was almost always lifestyle change and diet was always the biggest thing. I remember you telling me, well, I have a patient that, you know, the moment they get up, they have to start eating and they have to eat these little meals this many times a day. And you're like, and you have another patient that they're not to eat anything for several hours with being awake. And, you know, some are supposed to sleep twice a day when like just all these different things. Because again, we're all individuals.
Yeah. And that's the craziest thing that I found is like, you know, you want to get so tied, like even the whole vegan thing, you know, I was vegan because I thought vegan cured cancer and you get so tied to this one idea that is supposed to be right for everybody. Well, everyone's individual, but then you have these cancer cells that grow inside of humans and every freaking cancer cell seems to be individual too. It's like, you know, you can't do a one size fits all approach. And that's what I kind of love about it and hate. It's like, it's so confusing and you never seem to be able to understand it, but you know, that's why it's cancer, you know, it's why it's.
And what's triggered in one person will have no effect at all in another. It's most certainly insane. And there's been a lot of things I've been talking to you about lately. You know, not a lot of people don't know this, but at one point I put a tear in the lowest 5 discs in my back and fucked up myself pretty damn good. But then since that, the Lyme's disease, and it's been one of those things I should have certainly addressed more. But as it's progressing to getting worse, I'm definitely going to have to take the steps into going and do that and look up all these different drugs you sent me the names of and kind of get a game
Crazy
plan
drugs.
of action to fix myself here. Cause you know, it's taking away, you know, days of my life.
Yeah. Well, and
it's
in my opinion, like it, especially when you're sick with something like Lyme's disease, I mean, you're dealing with feeling less than optimal every day. So that's like more than a day. It's like, you know, a day and a smidgen every day.
I actually told Holly, I was like, I can't even imagine what it'd be like to not be in pain and tired all the fucking time. And she's like, yeah, you really will take over the world, won't you? I'm like, yeah, I really think I could. Like,
Yep.
I mean, but that's another thing you dealt with a lot in. What was the name of the place you were with in Arizona?
So I used to work at a center called Envita.
Which I did get to go through and walk through once, and it was huge.
Yeah.
Impressive, expensive.
Yep. It is expensive, but you know, and what's funny, you think of what it is expensive. Yeah. Cause it's like, we can't bill insurance cause some of these treatments are non-conventional mixed with conventional. It's just, you know, that's the way it goes.
That's what works to cure
what
cancer.
Works for cancer. And that's what it works for. I mean, these infections, like, you know, people who have Lyme disease that have had their whole lives, you know, 30 some years, you know, they don't want to be diagnosed the right way. And, you know, I very much so believe and know that most people with certain health conditions, like downstream, they probably started with Lyme disease, including cancer. It distracts your immune system, not to scare you, Garrett, but it just basically makes your body not able to function the way that it needs to function on a variety of levels. And then you end up with all these other crazy things. So yeah, we can't bill insurance because you don't want to use the diagnosis code Lyme disease. And that's what it actually is. If you treat the root cause, which is the infection, a lot of these other downstream things
And you said there's
resolved.
like thousands of strains of Lyme's disease or mutations.
Not thousands,
maybe.
but I mean, there's a ton of different types. There's like Borrelia, which is the mainstream. And then there's like Burgdorferi. There's like ones from all across the country and world. So you could just keep going on, and you're going to have different strains with combinations of other co-infections that need treatments individually. So there's all sorts of shit on that. But the nice thing about a place like Envita is we can actually do the right diagnostics, and then you treat exactly what's going on in a stepwise manner, because we've got the knowledge and the ability to. And all of a sudden you have somebody who's been sick and not able to walk for the past 10 years, doing cartwheels and running a marathon. Like, it's insane, and then I see it every day. So it makes me feel even more passionate about it. And I'm like, I just got to keep my mouth shut because it's not the right way. And it's annoying.
Yeah. But you also saw a lot of patients go the other way.
Oh, hell yeah.
Which I know was very tough on you because you cared about each one of them. You knew each one individually.
Yeah.
So Envita was basically when no one else has an answer. No one else can figure it out.
Exactly.
Everything that they've misdiagnosed an individual with and told them, do this, take that, and it never helps. And Envita was the last resort.
Yep. And what I always wish that people would come to us sooner, and they did, especially like in the last few years. More and more people earlier on in their journey come there because they've heard about it, fortunately. But like, I had patients.
And the alternative methods of treatment are now becoming more and more accepted, more and more talked about. Even marijuana.
Yep.
Like
all of that.
I don't know. Somehow it's still a Schedule I drug where it means it has no medical value, but whatever. I know with cancer, a lot of times there was the mistletoe injections. Like, so, are there many other places that kind of combine the conventional and unconventional like you do?
There's, no, not like we do. That's a hard no. But there are centers, like there's a lot of centers actually that do one part of it. Like they'll do the mistletoe injections. And I don't even know if Envita does that particular treatment, but like, they'll do the high dose vitamin C, and then they might do like a specialized type of chemo delivery, but they're only doing one or two things. And what really matters is one, the synergy, like of all those things together, how they're administered, and then also being able to actually have access to the specific drugs. And then what Envita does that's so different is we test. Like we have like a partnership with labs across the world that will literally diagnose the full and map the full genome of a cancer cell. So from like the actual signaling pathways of a cancer, talking to other cells in the body, what is going to shut down those pathways, the best possible chemo drugs for them, how fast the cancer is going to mutate. Like when you have that information, it's like, you have a full map of the best possible treatments. So then that's why Envita has all those things, because we need to have those treatments for the patient and deliver them the right way, because different pathways you don't want to shut down at different times. And like, there's all sorts of weird stuff that you can learn from one test.
It almost sounds like learning and studying an alien species.
It is. It totally is.
Yeah.
Or like a infection. It literally acts like a virus, because it'll go into your body and then it's going to mutate, and then it's going to impact other things in your body and make them do weird things. Then you have to kind of chase it down. So, it's literally like, it's very frustrating. It's its own creature.
Absolutely.
But and it's your body at the same time.
Yeah.
Like that's what's so bizarre about it. It's literally your body that is changing its replication and changing how it's dividing on its own. Like, just, no, I'm going to take over here.
And it's the individual, it's got to be treated as a whole. That's what it really comes down to. Like you said, there's so many places that they do one part or focus on one thing, but that's not assessing the whole entire body.
Yep. And I always, like, you're looking at cells that are dividing unchecked, and what checks them is your immune system. So that's why you've got a weakened immune system, which almost always happens with cancer patients. And it's just their body isn't able to do what it's supposed to do to stop this crazy stuff from growing. So you have to treat, of course, the cells, but you also have to treat the body, because the body already knows how to kick out these cancer cells for one reason or another, whether it's been exposed to a toxin or, there's some type of virus that it's been exposed to. And then if the body can't check those things, which it's got to be able to do, it's just going to come again, and I don't know why more people don't focus on that. You got to focus on a whole immune system, not just try to treat the problem and kill off, the cancer, the virus, all these things. Like, you can't do it.
You got to build the defenses, not just get rid of the threat.
Yep. Which is why, like, even with all the COVID stuff going on, it's like, we're looking at this backwards, friends. Like, you can kill off a virus as much as you want, but there's just going to be a bigger, better one coming sooner. So you got to be stronger.
Do you think the everyone wearing a mask, the everyone washing their hands, sanitizing, all this, do you think that is decreasing an individual's immune system more than we're really protecting ourselves from catching something? Do you think we're just slowly weakening ourselves?
Yeah, that's a loaded question there.
It is.
But I'm more than happy to say I think the ultimate answer is yes. And because one, you're not able to ever build an immunity to what you are exposed to. So that's like the basic answer. Now, if the process of building that immunity is going to kill you, yeah, you should probably be wearing a mask. But when it comes to like the actual effects of wearing a mask and like going out in public, like all we're doing right now is trying to protect each other, right? And that's the purpose of it. The goal is not to build immunity by wearing that mask,
I do.
Yeah. And sanitizing. So I think, yeah, people should be wearing masks, but if we're going to really try to boost our immune systems, we should be able to exercise. We should be able to do things that make us happy. We should be able to be outside.
And things that increase your immune system.
It's funny, like speaking about your immune system, I've had the privilege of being able to monitor immune markers every week on patients, right? Sometimes multiple times a week. I can tell a patient's labs are going to be based on their mood. Like almost always. They're happy people, you see their immune systems go up. They're sad people, you see their immune systems go down. All of it, all the time. Even tumor markers do the same thing. Like, this is the kind of stuff that like, now what I'm watching going on in the world, there's so much depression. People are killing themselves. Like, no, there's no community. There's no joy. I'm like, oh man, like our immune systems are in the tank right now.
Yeah, for a lot of people. For anyone listening to this, I'm clearly not as educated as Ashley on this, and this is my
Debatable.
Neanderthal statement, brain statement here. I almost feel like COVID is like the new chicken pox. What I mean by that is I feel like we're obviously not going to stop it. There is no stopping it. We've slowed it, which is great, but I feel like it just kind of has to move about through everyone. I mean, there are people that die to chickenpox. Yep. There are.
It's true.
But I mean, when I was a kid, if you heard about the fucking neighbor's son has chickenpox, you have your kid go play with them.
Yep.
So you make sure they get it early while their immune system is healthy and can battle it and fight it. And again, I know that's a complete different statement, but I really do feel like it almost has to just kind of move through about and everyone still live life. And it's just gotten so far out of fucking control. But you bringing up the mood markers, or the mood and being able to read the markers, that is probably, I would think, even more controversial to talk about than to use the word cured in individual patients of cancer. You can't be telling me that a person's mental state or mood is affecting their health.
Oh, yeah, it does.
I completely 100% believe
and
that.
That's like what's so funny. It's like, I think everyone, even like doctors, kind of know, but there's no way of really quantifying that. Like, how do you quantify someone's mood, because it's all interpretations of actions, Or I mean, technically, you could constantly be mapping someone's brain and see how that looks when they're happy and make sure that they're really happy all the time, but that's not possible. So you have no
not
way of
only is it
knowing.
not possible, but then through the constant observation, you've then changed everything just by
Exactly.
that observation.
Exactly.
But I mean, everyone's heard the story, the lady finds out she has cancer, she gives up her job and starts working at a soup kitchen and doing what she always wanted to do, and cancer starts going into remission. And we've all kind of heard those stories, and it's again, like we said in the very beginning, lifestyle is probably the biggest thing to an individual's health, mental and physical.
Hell yeah. Like it's everything.
So I just want to go so deep into this mental and physical connection, because I'm fascinated by it. And again, it's a thing where a lot of people don't want to even correlate that there is like they're somehow two completely different things.
Yeah. And they want to feel that way because then it makes it easier to understand,
It does. It is easier to answer your questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, what level of an answer are you receiving at that point? But yeah, there wouldn't be a way to measure. I mean,
not with the current data collection that we have, in my opinion. Here's what I'll say to that. So the way that I think, and like, for example, because this is something that's very important to me, like your mood and all of that.
I can see just the way like how happy you are talking about and
Yeah.
getting into it right now. Like, this is your shit.
I love
your world.
this stuff.
Yeah.
But that's like, so, I now work with this company called BioStrap, and we can measure heart rate variability, heart rate, and all those things. And, generally speaking, your heart rate is a really good measure of like what's going on. And the heart rate variability is basically how much wiggle room do you have? Like, are you super, super hyped up and you can't really deal with anything, or are you not? So
being anxious versus being relaxed.
Exactly. And so the heart rate variability in this BioStrap, that's what I think is kind of going to be a good way of measuring it when they do start to do more studies. And because you can tell, in my clients that I work with, like I can see, oh, you've had a really stressful week, you're really not doing well based on their heart rate variability, because that's what's going on. And I know the other markers and other things that are going on in their lives, and you can kind of see over time what's actually happening.
Well, when you're speaking of clients now,
now
you are working more with not so much sick individuals, but more optimizing athletes.
Yep.
And
so I have like corporations that I'm actually even working with that to try to optimize their function, right? So they've got goals that they want to meet. And, I meet with them once a month to be able to actually say, okay, so this is what you need to do health-wise to make your brain work better. And all those companies are like super profitable in an arena where nobody else is profitable. So it's just, you start to see like, well, okay, yeah, it's a really good measure of health, these BioStraps. And so I can then give them the tools that they need based on what I'm seeing in their data to say, you need to do this, this, and this. Here's my suggestions. They go do it. In a month, we check in. So
interesting.
Yeah.
And
athletes too, like same things.
One specifically, Henry Cejudo, his last fight.
Insane.
He never, he looked like a perfect specimen and athlete in that fight. Every movement was sharp. And I know you worked a lot with him. Yeah,
for nutrition. And then he worked with Neuroforce One as well. And I worked with Neuroforce One to basically make sure everything was like locked in and dialed and he had the right foods and stuff. And like, even with his cut, like it's just a piece of cake,
Oh, he looked excellent. He that was a hell of a performance for him. So you're working with other fighters, other
wrestling teams. I've got There's all sorts of people that I've worked with that like, it's funny because like I am an athlete, but I don't know much about MMA or just basically from you, and screaming at the top of your lungs at televisions. But yeah, it's super cool because everything has to be so dialed in. And like, that's what I love. I love like, if you're at your peak, I'm going to get you to a different peak because you can be higher,
Well, yes. And, okay. That's a perfect segue into, you being an athlete. Fuck. The marathons and the Spartan races and the kind of shit
Correction,
you do.
I've never actually ran a marathon.
Oh, really?
Nope, never just that distance.
Really?
Yeah.
Just further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Exactly.
About
okay.
quadruple.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you are taking it to the peak. Again, you're doing a quadruple marathon.
Yeah.
You need to get your body at peak optimization
Yep.
for as long as you can.
Yeah.
And then when you are not performing, I saw you take a picture of your BioStrap the other day, 99% recovery rate.
Yeah.
Recovery is important to the body as training.
Yep.
But you really demand, like you think, fighters and everything, the cardio they need, absolutely. But
yeah.
you're breaking your body down in the amount of
that's not
time
wrong.
that, I know you've had some rough recoveries from.
And so just so the listeners know, I don't just run. I do like obstacle course racing, but more specifically like my
Podium Dreams, right?
Yeah, that's
everybody check out Podium
Dreams.
Dreams.
It's pretty legit. I'm kind of crazy. I mean, I like to find the point of failure. So I don't just run these events. I actually do like the ultra ones where it's like, 60 mile or the like World's Toughest Mudder, which is my all-time favorite event, where you go for 24 hours till you can't go anymore. And it's usually freezing cold and you usually are getting in and out of water and it's super muddy. And honestly, I think it's I look forward to it. I think about it every morning when I wake up and every evening before I go to bed.
Again, one and the same, the mental and the physical. Like the mental fortitude it takes to go out and keep doing that, because I'm watching it. I'm seeing the updates from everyone. And I mean, you look miserable, but you smile and you just fucking grind on.
Oh yeah. There's like videos of me talking where like I'm smiling. I'm like, yeah, well, it's really cold and I can't feel my fingers and I think my ankle kind of hurts, but I'm just, going to get out there and keep going. And I just wanted to get, to a certain mileage point and I did. And that was cool. So like, it's just sweet and I love it. And I think back on those times and like getting to the point where you don't think you can possibly go on and going further. Like those are the points that like have changed my life. No question, no matter what. Like I was never the same after the first race. And the second time I did it, I was like, I met my goal. The first time it defeated me. The second time I got it. And like, finishing that race, I remember thinking like my life is never going to be the same. And in the past year since finishing that race, I've done more than I've done in my whole life combined.
You have definitely had a crazy fucking year.
Yeah.
I mean, shit, all the years I've known you, you've had crazy years. Like
I don't like to do it light.
Well, and you're always going somewhere. And like you said, even, the job you were in, you were always facing challenges and struggles with individuals and all the time that you were gone and your mom was still sick and, all that. But then you just completely, like I said, when we first began this, that day I talked to you, when you left Arizona and you went to Colorado and you said, this is the first morning I've woke up since I was 6 years old and I don't have to think about who is dying today.
Yep. And that
you're like, I don't know what to do. I'm actually about to just freak out because I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And you probably did freak out.
I did. I just smoked a lot of weed.
But you have done so much shit since.
Oh, yeah. It's insane.
You've moved.
Yep.
You now work with not only some of the top athletes and everything like that, but some of the smartest minds.
Yeah.
In both health and the technology of the biometrics in the BioStrap.
Yeah. I don't even really know how it all happened. And I have new opportunities that come up all the time. And like, that's what's so strange. It's like everywhere I look, there's opportunity. And that's what's strange is before it was the only place I could look because you're dealing with, people's lives all the time, like was down. And then I came home at the end of the day and would just sit there and stare at the wall being like, okay, well, hey, that's like 5 people today that I really don't know if they're ever going to make it that I had to talk to. And that's just like, it drains you. And so, I mean, I think part of, even when I talked to you that day, I was like, I literally didn't know what, like, I even liked to do.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll go run. Like, I know I can do that. But it was very weird just because I've been dealing with, not in a poor me way. Like, I'm fucking grateful for it. Like, I would never have the drive and ambition that I do and do what I do without all that. So granted, but
well, and helping people was your mission.
Hell
That's
yeah.
why you did it. And you were very successful.
But
I mean, there's a lot of people you helped. Everyone gave up on or said there was no help. There was no hope.
And I can't, like, I told you before, I said I felt like I was trying to catch people on a mud pit as they're sliding down a hole when I was working in oncology before. And I know that sounds like a really gloom analogy, but like, it's hard. It's hard. And I care. I am a very caring person. And now I feel like I'm kind of like helping people while they're out, like living. And I want to teach people how to actually live their life and like fulfill whatever intention or mission they're on this planet to do. And that's a hell of a lot better and easier, I guess, than dealing with the other for me.
For the mental
side. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And again, the mental and the physical, how are you feeling now? How are you performing now that you have been in a place where you feel like you're at peace and you're smiling every day when you get up?
So, this is, I'm going to brag. Like, my physical body looks different.
I know.
Even last night, you commented on my biceps, and I'm like, no. And I was like, low key, I actually know for a fact my biceps are looking rocking right now.
I was like, Jesus, yeah. You took a monster jacket on. I'm like, fuck, you've really been working out. You're like, yeah.
And honestly, I'm working out less than ever, but I'm crushing it up mountains. I'm skiing and like, I'm doing all the things. But even if I did that amount before, I never really had muscle. Now I have muscle. And like I'm defined, like my body feels better. Like I just feel lighter. I don't wake up every morning and feel like I'm gasping for air. My sleep is better. My mood is better. And the only thing I really say that I honestly like I still deal with is like I still feel sad sometimes and like anxious and have no reason for it. And that when I get like all anxious, I'm like, oh shit, well, why do I feel anxious? But like, I think that's going to get better and go away. I think I'm just so used to feeling anxious that every now and then some part of my body's like, oh, got to feel anxious.
It just triggers. Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. Or maybe that's the time where you're getting a hunch about something,
Yeah, I got to go. I got to tickle.
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer of don't ignore a hunch.
Yeah.
Like those little... I've even called you at points where I will get a feeling and I'm like, shit, something's wrong with someone. And I've even called you like, are you okay? And you're like, yeah, why? I'm like, I don't know. And then I'll find out someone was just in an accident or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in following this. But you've now optimized.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of this is through the BioStrap, right?
Oh,
that
definitely.
you're learning to optimize. Like you were explaining to me your testing of liquor and how what each individual kind of liquor, how it affects your sleep, how it affects your blood pressure, how it affects your recovery, like everything. I'm like, what the fuck? This little strap, you can learn all that, and you're like, that's not even close to the beginning of.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and this is just the start of it.
Oh yeah, that's like scraping the surface. We have I shouldn't say I'm technically separate from them, but there's so much technology packed into like this little tiny like wrist thing. And then it comes up on your screen and you can say, okay, well, I know this day I had this. You can do like an actual reading where like you're doing a reading before you do something. And then you say you eat something to see how your body responds. You can do it after. You'll do another recording. You can literally see the different reports. Like, what? Like, that's so cool for me, especially because then if I have questions, especially back when I was working with cancer patients, like you really needed to know how they were doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could tell from like this device, you know, sometimes when they were getting sick before they would have a fever, have funky blood cells. Like, that's huge.
I remember you telling me about that so you could almost predict when they're going to get sick because of what their immune system's doing. And
exactly.
Triggering by a device reading
crazy.
On your wrist.
It's crazy.
It is. It's cool as fuck, though.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's why I like it, because it's cool as fuck.
The modern assassins, you know, the way that name came up was, I was thinking the opposite line, primitive, because a bow is considered a primitive weapon. And then I'm looking at my bow and I'm like, this is not primitive.
No.
Like, I mean, yes, it's a bow and arrow, but this is some like modern assassin type shit. And that's literally what I said to myself. And then I killed a deer that night. I set it on film and I just rolled with it since. But I love the integration of technology and basics.
Yep.
Like,
exactly.
You know, is there something more simple than, I mean, we would not be here if people did not hunt down animals and eat food. I mean, that's the realistics of it. But now, you know, we can use a GPS and I can look at a satellite photo. I can have an idea of what I think these animals are doing before I even go there.
Yep.
But you're doing the same thing. Something as simple as the human body, which is, you know, we've dealt with them for
a long time.
Yeah, pretty much as long as there's been human existence. That somehow goes hand in hand. Something that simple, well, no, not simple. That is probably the most complicated thing in the universe is the human body. But basic.
Yeah.
And then combining the technology of this biostrap to really optimize life.
Exactly. And that's why I was actually looking for biostrap before like I even fell into, like, we kind of met. Like, I didn't even know they existed. And then actually Fran's Kitchen, who I partnered with, she's the one that introduced us. And I remember like sitting down to the first meeting we had and just being like, this is a thing? Like, oh my gosh.
That
so
is what you knew there needed to be.
Yeah. And I was so excited. Like, and I mean, it was immediate, like, yeah, let's do this. And, you know, we developed nutrition plans with them and like, it was the coolest shit. Like,
I remember
so
talking
cool.
to you and you were, you were going, you were telling me the story exactly as you are right now about how cool it was and all the shit you were talking about and all the shit you learned and the things that you'll eventually be able to do with it and this and that. And then you're like, oh, and I don't know how the fuck I was even in this meeting. Like,
no idea.
You said you were all of a sudden realized like, wow, these are some major players in the technology world.
Yeah, they're
in
huge.
the health field and everything else. You just kind of realize you're immersed and amongst, you know, some really important people. And I mean, I always told you as soon as you left to go to Portland for school for all this, I said, one day you're going to do something that changes like the world for people. And I mean, something like this, it really could.
I think it will.
I mean, if people, I've used it. I got pretty frustrated. I'm not going to lie. It was even more deterring seeing how bad my sleep was. I know how bad my sleep is.
Yeah.
But after trying to sleep and then it literally saying there was no sleep data because I never got
any.
Yeah.
Boy, what are we going to do with you?
Yeah. It's, you know, it was kind of pissing me off a lot. But I know, especially since our conversation last night about the steps I really need to start taking with starting to combat this Lyme disease. For, I guess, to fill people in a little more, when I was first, it was 10, 15 years ago, probably closer to 15 years ago. I found out I was allergic to doxycycline, which is, the antibiotic used to treat it. So they put me on just like amoxicillin or whatever the fuck you use for the common cold or something. I'm sure it really didn't do nothing. And then talking to you and everything about the blood-brain barrier and how head injuries help, well, not help, kind of
can drive it into places like your brain.
Yeah. And things like that to where it gets worse. And basically all the symptoms you were listing is all the shit that I've dealt with. So I definitely got to get further into that, and I got to start using my BioStrap more. So
yeah,
I can say, Ashley, what the fuck does this mean? So
I mean, by the end of it, you're gonna be like full up, red up.
But you're doing that now too, right? Grimmel Biometrics, to where people can say, here's all my data, here's my tests, here's my biometric readings, like, and you optimize their lifestyles.
And I've termed it biometric coaching because it's literally like based on your biometrics, I can help you to understand a little bit more about what's going on. And I actually think I'm going to hire on a couple people as well because, there's a need. Like a lot of people are interested. And that's honestly, I was kind of forced. I didn't really want to start my own company necessarily, but there was a need for it. And like, me, I can't pass up an opportunity.
Yeah.
And like, I just, it's fascinating and it's fun. So as long as it fits those categories for me, I'm good with it. And it's been crazy to see like how much easier it makes my job. Is like, I used to be in nutrition. Now I dabble in a lot of things, but I wish I had this back then. Like, oh my God.
The being able to get the readings and results like instantaneously and through a phone and through chat like you do with people.
It's crazy.
I could see MMA athletes. Yeah. They're some of the most demanding athletes. It's no longer just like who's the better fighter.
Nope.
Like you said, with the weight cut, like the way you had Cejudo set up to go into his weight cut, his body was prepared to cut the weight and be ready, and it did not put any strain on him. Yep. He looked fucking amazing.
Exactly.
But so I would think MMA athletes are going to be one of the biggest to jump on this.
They are. I mean, they definitely are, because you need that data in order to be able to really. And
I would think a lot of it is that some of the shit that they're most interested in is probably the recovery rate.
Yep. The recovery rate, and even where you are, like if you know where you are going into a cut, like, and you're able to monitor that throughout, and like just seeing your actual readiness and ability to go out there and crush and what you have to do to get there as fast as possible. Yeah, you're going to have some advantages. It's clear.
Okay. They're the wristband you're wearing now.
Yeah.
There's two other ones, right?
Yep. So, there's the wristband, there's a heart rate monitor, and there's a foot pod. For optimal data, you want all of them. No question. For just like, basic readings, you can literally get away with just wearing one. But like for an athlete, you can measure like your how fast is your foot moving, or your feet balanced, You can actually do like analysis of how your overhead squat is, your deadlift form, like all those things can be picked up.
Holy
and that's why
shit.
I know I told you there's all sorts of shit we can do. But like the real data collection, you want the heart rate monitor on if you're going to be doing exercise, because you want continuous heart rate monitoring. The strap only monitors, it can do every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 2 minutes, and then you can trigger it to actually measure. But that's why, during exercise or something like that, you want to have it all the time, so we know
continuous,
exactly what's happening. And then the other part of it that is huge is you can do full-on sleep studies in your house.
that's what I started doing, and I was getting pissed off about. I'm like, fuck, I know I didn't sleep. I don't need you to tell me.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
It was getting bad. But I mean, I'm even going to start wearing, like, when I go on, these like public land hunts and scouts and.
Well, and you can technically just get away with just wearing the heart rate monitor without even this thing, because then the real thing that you need to know is, I mean, in theory, your heart rate throughout that time. But the other thing that'd be interesting as far as like tracking your location and stuff, if you want to know how far you're actually walking, but that can be, I mean, you use other devices for that as well.
Does this read your temperature?
There's temperature sensing integration, but this one doesn't read, this version at least doesn't read
so
it.
there, okay.
But there is something that you can build onto
about,
that. Yeah.
Okay, we were talking about something to be able to read the body temperature as well.
Yep. Which is
fucking technology. How long till that thing's just, hey, you want to get this inserted in you?
I don't know. I don't know that I would get it inserted. That seems like a little invasive.
We just put a little slice.
I'm sure it's going to
slide
happen
this
soon.
In there.
Yeah, there's somebody that contacted us asking if we did like real-time nutritional metabolite analysis or something like that, and I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, doesn't it tell you like what nutrition you need? I'm like, I don't know about that.
That's where the biometrics coach comes in.
Yeah, that's where I come in, but nope, it just, I think that they somehow thought that it was connected to like something collecting your blood. But the only thing that works, they have something like that for like patients with diabetes so it's just like a little monitor, continuous glucose monitor. But
interesting.
It's cool. Data, crazy times.
Well, data is only good if you know what to do with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like reading all this stuff, to me, it's another language. Like, you know what I mean? But the way you know through all the schooling you've gone through, all the different experiences you've put yourself in, all the different puzzles you've tried to figure out, like that's what you've always done.
Yeah.
Is take, like I said, the most complicated thing in the universe is the human body. And why is this one doing something different than the rest? And you're breaking that puzzle down. So data is only as good as the person analyzing it. So I would think that this biometric coaching, you were kind of on the front lines of what's going to become like, something common, like something that there's so many online nutritional coaches, but this is far beyond just, okay, well, how much did you lift this week versus last week? What did the scale tell you every morning?
Yeah.
Oh no, you know what? We need to put some more protein in your diet.
Yep.
Like,
and that's where you can actually look at the overall effects of your mood, and that's why it does integrate that mentality part that I think matters so much.
Speaking of mood, we're gonna fire back up.
Yep. It's just I don't know why more people don't. I think give it a couple of years, like more and more people are going to recognize the role of mood. I think once we see the downstream effects of how COVID has impacted us beyond just people getting a virus.
You know what? You're rough. Probably right in that right about that. People really have become more and more aware of mood and taking time to relax. But there's a lot of people that I think right now are being forced to do that because they can't just go through their daily routine, and you're not driving everywhere as much. You're not going to work for most people, into the offices and things like that, to where you have those distractions, to where you're forced to look at yourself a little deeper.
Yeah.
And kind of analyze. Like, you're not so preoccupied with life because a lot of life has kind of been shut down for a lot of people.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have like filler life. You have your TV shows that you're all supposed to watch. You have your
nightly
football
programming.
You have your programming, and you have your magazine that you're supposed to read, the YouTube videos you're supposed to watch, the Instagram posts with the booty pictures. Like, there's so much filler in life, and a lot of that's been taken away. Granted, we've kind of replaced it with other bullshit, but it's interesting. Like we kind of had a period where we peeled back the layers of humanity, or well, the piled on layers of humanity, I should say, not the actual layers of humanity, to expose what humanity really was, which was like, they ain't much there. Everyone just sat at home. There was a few outliers that thrived, you and I being some of them, I think, but
yeah.
I mean you were left
I talk
behind.
about it there. COVID really, I don't mean this lightly. I mean this gratefully. COVID really has not affected my life that entirely much.
That's because you live in the woods.
Yes. I'm not surrounded by a whole bunch of people. I'm not consumed with TV and all that shit going on. Like, I have my own activities, my own things I'm doing. I mean, I can't, I grew the garden this year. Holly and I put that garden right where you had your garden because, and we spent so much time learning how to have a garden, how to tend to it, then how to harvest everything, how to can, like all that stuff.
Because you didn't have filler in your life. You didn't have something to take away from positive time. Instead of taking
more filler, I, decided to do something fulfilling.
Exactly.
Instead of pick some random filler. And I mean, I hope a lot of people are doing that. It's just, it's hard because it seems like, people do. And then, all of a sudden things are taken away again.
Yep.
Or like every time you think, oh, we're kind of getting through this a little bit, we're starting to look up. Oh no, bars are shut down again.
Yeah.
Or, shit like that. Or the gyms just got shut down in Pennsylvania.
We're shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys have to wear a mask even just
walking
outside your home.
Yep. Colorado. Well, I mean, Aspen, at least, like that's you. I walk outside of my house and your mask is on. And great. Like, you know what? Just at this point, I'm like, whatever we have to do to get through this and like, just get it over with. Like, I'm going to do it. It's fine. But at first it was really weird. Like, cause me, I'm like I like my freedom. I mean, I hate, you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to run towards it and go do it.
Yep, yeah.
But like, I love running outside. I love being outside, and like even just having to go for like a walk to the park with a mask on was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And I'm like, okay, it's really not that bad. Like, I mean, people are dying. Like, get your facts straight, Ashley. And then, I mean, it was a change. But now it's like, y'all, come on. Let's just get it the fuck over with.
Here. Again, I'm not highly educated in all this shit. So don't hold my opinions as highly. But when this first all happened, it was new. We didn't know what the fuck was going to happen. Did they try to scare us with the numbers? Maybe. Were those the numbers we really thought of how many people might die? Maybe. Does it really matter? That was the situation. We didn't know what to do. We've gotten beyond that now, though.
Exactly.
Now we do kind of know what's going on.
Yeah.
And like you said, how many times are we going to continue isolation, breaking down immune systems?
Yep.
Just to reintroduce other things. Like, there's still people getting the cold, like just common colds and flus. Well, shouldn't they not be getting common colds and flus even if we're doing all this kind of shit? Like, I understand the slowing of it, and basically at the end, I think everybody just needs to be maybe a little more hygiene conscious.
Yeah.
And in interaction, but you got to still shake hands and get dirt on you if you're going to have an immune system. It
is true. I mean, we're going to have to. I mean, honestly, like, I shouldn't say this, but fuck it. Like, I think of the kids that are like the young kids that are supposed to be building immunity now. They're supposed to be exposed to shit. Well, come time COVID's over, those kids are in for a rude awakening because, like, they're going to have everything under the sun.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess technically they'll be able to build it after, but it's like you got to, take that into consideration too. Like there's things that you're supposed to become immune to. Like you're supposed to eat a little dirt as a kid.
For sure.
And that's not really happening. But that's not been happening to a lot of, like, I mean, to a certain degree for a while. Because like we're almost too good at cleaning.
Well, yeah. Well, and everything's done for you. Like I said, the gardening, you know, getting a little dirt on me going and gardening because I'm getting vegetables, but I can just pop them out of a can, or if I don't want them out of a can, I can pop them right out of a microwave tray or whatever it is.
Or you don't pop them out at all because they're green and you don't eat green things.
Okay. So, well, no, actually, I do eat more vegetables now. I am on mostly a meat diet, but
I will say that you're probably better than you were when I met you.
Yeah. So you implemented meat into a lot of the lifestyle and diet programs of the people you were working with, and even into your own life.
Yeah.
After some hillbilly knocked on your door with...
I'll tell you guys a story real quick. The way that Garrett and I met, we met years and years and years ago, and I needed someone to live in the upstairs portion of a farmhouse that's several hundred years old. Awesome. Garrett replies, and I'm like, well, he's a nice guy. Sure, why the hell not?
Well, we had met at Nick's.
That's true.
The
wedding.
very first time we met, our buddy had a shotgun wedding, like literally.
And we were there, and...
So that's why I knew you to reply
to the Facebook.
Yes.
But we hardly knew each other before.
Yeah.
Anyway, Garrett moves in. I'm, again, rock star vegan at this point. And the first night, like, I hardly know this guy. He shows up, shirt off, per the usual, and blood dripping down his hands. And he's got fish by the mouth on each of his fingers. He's like, you like trout? And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, literally in my head, I'm like, oh my God. And I was like, I'm good. And he's like, oh no, you got to try it. Just caught it. And he just looked so like horrifying that I was like, yep, I'll try some. So I cooked it up. And I think that was like the only time I broke my veganism, and I ate some trout that he had caught.
You did take a bite. You
10
did
minutes.
take a bite.
World's smallest bite. But I did it.
And then she watched me bring home deer and other things and butcher them outside.
There was never not blood on the driveway when I left to go to work in the morning. Yeah. And then there's another time he came home with a corn leaf, and I was like, oh, did he bring home an ear of corn? Nope. There was a dove in there, and he was about to go cook it up for breakfast.
Yeah, dove breast wrapped up in a corn leaf.
And it wasn't...
It was just to keep in my pocket so I didn't get as bloody.
It wasn't until like 6 years later or something like that I ate meat again.
Was it really that long?
5 years, maybe 5 years. It was after a Spartan race, a super, so like 16 miles in Montana. And I was hungry as shit. I was so hungry. And we were at this like little, Montana bar, and like all my friends got burgers, and I'm sitting there with iceberg lettuce. And I'm like, oh my God. And I said, because my friend got hers without a bun, I was like, can I just, try a bite of that? And I was like, oh my God, I need to eat it. So I ordered an elk burger, and it was my first meat. And everyone says, oh, you're going to get so sick. I didn't feel sick at all. I felt fucking great. And then it was slow. Like I would eat meat like every now and then. I still don't eat meat all the time, but I eat a fucking decent amount of meat because it like, I don't know, it made me, I feel like an athlete. Honestly, it's really hard. It is for me at least to be like, get it.
And you try to go things like that, like elk and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm super picky about my meat. Like I sound like such a bougie asshole when I order. I'm like, do you know like where your meat's from? And they're like, excuse me, what? No, like I typically try to get like the grass fed, like the wild game, and I'll eat the organs, like go all in. I don't like the tongue deal, but I eat liver and all of it, and like eat nose to tail. That's like, if you're gonna kill it, you might as well use it. So I feel a little bit better about that maybe. But yeah, I think I don't know. You sparked the fire with your freaking trout.
I remember you sent me a picture of it was a paper you wrote in college, and you sent me a picture. Your professor made a notation in the margin that said, wow, the vegan girl is making extremely good points or validations for eating meat.
Yep.
Because you were talking about how it is important for some people to have.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I'm like, I didn't want to believe that for a large portion of my career as a nutritionist. But I mean, I saw firsthand. I had people that were actually vegan their whole lives that then began eating meat and saw improvements in their health and actually their cancer. And then I saw the opposite, where people that, were eating really, really healthy, like paleo style meals, were like very clean, but they would cut out the meat and all of a sudden everything would look better for them. The tumors would go down. And that's what's so cool. Like I might go vegan again in like 10 years, but who cares? Like, whatever.
And you know
how
what?
I feel.
Exactly. And at that time in your life, that may be the best thing for you.
Absolutely.
So you can't even say like, oh, this person's, supposed to eat this, do this. I mean, your body's changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I cut you off. We were talking about where we really started to bond with, after I moved in, this was when your mom was what? I guess this was 3 years into her
3 years
fight.
in. Yeah, she was really like nothing was working. She had to stop treatment. And but I shouldn't say that. She had to stop chemo because at this point at least, she had to stop chemo because the chemo was killing her faster than the cancer was. And I think at this point she didn't tell me that like the cancer was back and worse because she had gotten some reduction. But regardless, she had terrible side effects. So I was on a mission to make my mama some Rick Simpson oil. And that's like this, it's pretty big in the integrative oncology world, but it's supposed to be like a certain like way of preparing cannabis and distilling it down into an oil. And that, it's supposed to be anti-cancer. And I'd read all this about it, and I was like hell-bent on figuring out how to make it myself, because in Maryland, dope is still dope, and they think it's the devil's flower. So.
I mean, there is dispensaries and everything now, and you can get cards and all, and it's changed a lot, but still everywhere it's considered a Schedule 1. But I mean, that was several years ago, when you couldn't find it even for a cancer patient.
Yep. So we, I knew Garrett smoked weed, and I didn't. Really.
I tried it once.
I didn't. So I thought, my grandfather was head of narcotics for the state of Maryland. So I'm a DARE award-winning patron of the world, basically. So I never did drugs, but anyway, I knew this drug was supposed to save my mom, and I would have done anything for my mom. So we went and we got us, Garrett went, I think, and got some weed, some cannabis. And we did a lot of Googling on the dark web, tried to figure out how to make this stuff. And we made Rick Simpson oil together, and at risk of exploding the entire house, which I appreciate him for not letting happen.
Well,
and
anything you're going to do, if it's worth doing, do it right. So your mom was in bad shape at that point. Like you said, you were willing to do anything you could to help her at that point. So we did a lot of research, and for a while it really did help her. She finally got some sleep. I remember that. Like, oh my God, it was so exciting. Weeks.
Yep. Because when at that time I was like, I lived at home, and like I would. Like, she would text me in the middle of the night and tell me how much pain she was in. And sometimes I would go up there and just be with her because she was hurting so bad. And I remember when she finally got high, thank God. She said she felt weird, but then all of a sudden she was asleep. And I was so excited. I almost thought she was dead. I kept making sure she was okay, but like she was sleeping finally. And I was so excited. And I'm like, okay, this woman is on every freaking pain medicine under the sun right now, and this is what does it? Like, okay, so I was sold. I was like, marijuana is cool, officially. But then my mom, she never actually admitted to getting high until one time when she calls me and she's like, Ashley, something's wrong. And I'm like, what do you mean? So I just took my medicine and, that oil shit is what she called it. And I think I'm floating. And I was like, are you what? And she's like, I think I took too much. And I was like, how much did you take? She's like, well, I took it. And then I think I forgot that I took it. And I'm like, oh God. So yeah, that was it. And then she got a little scared for a while because she did not like that feeling. But I kind of finally convinced her to start taking it again.
Just imagine if that was another actual like pharmaceutical medication.
Oh yeah.
Now.
Oh yeah. Well, and
you take your medication and take it again.
Yeah.
But
not good.
No,
not good. And my mom had never smoked or done any drug in her life. You know, I think she did smoke cigarettes, but like she never smoked marijuana. She never touched marijuana, none of it. And here, this woman is like high as shit and I'm just laughing at her. But yeah, that was fun. I mean, that was really the tipping point in my career where I was like, well, I know I like this natural stuff, so I'm going to stick with that for a while. And I think it's helped me out.
Well, that leads to another question I want to ask you.
I don't like that smile.
All that kind of is part of what led you to Peru too, isn't it?
Oh yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Now I know where you're going. Yes,
Yeah.
It is. Well, honestly, like I've been through some shit,
I know.
a lot of shit. And I therapy and all that other stuff, it didn't do anything for me. And I felt like there was something I needed to connect with. So yeah, I liked the plant medicine. And so I did a little journey down there. Actually, you and I learned about ayahuasca pretty much from you, I think.
Yeah, I learned a lot about it from Rogan podcast. And listening to different people and their experiences.
Yeah. And that chick that was a news reporter, what's her name?
Amber Lyon.
Amber Lyon.
Yes. Yep. That I should go back and listen to that.
That was a great podcast. But after listening to that and our conversations, I was like, I'm going to figure out how to do this. Well, and I didn't even figure it out. Actually, my good friend of mine he's got cancer now. It's shitty.
No shit.
And he's his girlfriend, actually. I ended up meeting this chick randomly on a ski hill. Taylor. She's coolest chick on the face of the earth. Like my soul sister for sure.
Does she still do like I
don't know. She just had a baby. She's
okay,
like.
so maybe she's not. I was going to tell you to plug her.
Yeah,
she was
Taylor,
still putting together the travel.
Well, she was doing something called Full Moon Tours.
Full Moon Tours. Okay.
At the time, she's like, I really want to do this. And I was like, yo, you got to do this. And then she ended up doing it. And she called me. She's like, years later, do you want to go to Peru? And I'm like, fuck yeah, I do. Like, let's go. And then I was like one of her first little groups with like that we took. And so we literally stayed in town with a medicine man, right? And like did all the stuff, and we had to like fast before you do the ayahuasca. And we went to a shaman and like did the full ceremony. Like it was the real deal. This is like an 8th generation shaman, like whole thing. And then the day after, because there's certain plants that work really well together, there's San Pedro.
Mm-hmm.
And San Pedro for me was like, I mean, I tend to be a little bit on the spectrum. Like that literally made me feel what it felt like to connect with other people. And I had never felt that before in my life. Like
I remember you telling me about laying in the hammock or something.
Yeah, with somebody else.
Yeah.
I hate touching people.
Yeah.
Like I fucking hate it. And it made me experience what it was like to experience other people.
And you started dancing with all the I guess natives.
Yeah. I'm on the side of a cliff.
Yeah.
In a cave that was carved out by some Peruvians back in the day, like centuries and centuries and centuries ago. There's an altar, right? There's a fucking altar. And I'm like, this seems like a good idea. And I'm not on anything at this point. So I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. So one by one with Peruvian flute band playing, not lying about that. There is really a flute band in this cliff playing music, really happening. We go up to the front of the altar and we sit down one by one and we drink this shit. And I'm like, this is some Indiana Jones stuff. Like this
probably
is
the worst tea ever.
Oh, potent. And yeah,
Your face says it.
yeah. I mean, you'll never forget that taste. That's for damn sure. And then you wait. And then usually the person next to you starts puking, then the other person starts puking, then all of a sudden you're hallucinating your fucking face off and you're puking your brains out. But then that goes away and it's a really interesting time. I mean, you blast off into like another universe. And honestly, you didn't ask what it was like, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The first part of it is like, have you ever had an orgasm that was like so intense that it almost hurt?
I get you.
Yeah. It felt like that pain. It was like too much of an experience. And I was like, oh my God,
Just
what have I
almost
done?
Overwhelming.
No, overwhelming.
Gotcha.
Like it's almost like it was too much for my human senses to fully be able to take in. And I was like, holy shit, I'm not ready for that. But I was talking to somebody. There's like somebody there and it's a woman, but I don't know who she is, but she's there. And I was like, I'm not ready for this. She's like, yo, but this is what you wanted. And she didn't say yo, but she said, this is what you asked for. And I'm like, but I am ready. She's like, oh, maybe you're not. And I'm like, I'm ready for this. Like, come on. And like, she's like, well, you have to be able to bear this. And I was like, okay, I'm going to bear it, but I don't know how much longer I can. And as soon as I said, okay, I'm going to bear it, it went back to like, more reasonable hallucinations. But yeah, like ever since doing that, I've never been the same.
I remember you telling me a lot of like, cause I was, fascinated by it all too. And I remember you telling me a lot of kind of what you learned too while taking ayahuasca.
Yep.
And kind of the entity, or what would be your word?
I called it her.
Her.
She.
Yes, I remember you
But
saying
there's like
her,
this
but
female figure in there that literally like in there, and I say in there like as in my head or like whatever universe
whatever
I was in.
this space was.
And it was like my here's the weird thing. Like she met me and she's like, okay, I'm going to take you out of your body now because you're going to feel uncomfortable here for a bit. And I was out of my body in like another really bright universe. And there was like those little, like, those little boxes that you made dialogue boxes. What are they called? As a kid for school, you have to like these little, like a little scene almost, like a little toy box, dollhouse. And she would set up a scene for me from my past. And it would be something that honestly really still upset me. And she would run me through the scenario and be like, do you understand why this happened and how it is? And I'd be like, yeah. And she would swipe it away and another one would come in. And so it was just one thing after the next. And I was like, wow, this is like fucking intense. And then I would come back to my body and be like, holy shit, my body's like, I'm a human. Like, oh my God. And I looked down and at the time there was like, I always had a lot of anxiety in my chest. And there was literally like maggots, not in real life.
I remember you telling me this.
Eating my chest. And I'm like, oh my God. And like, but I didn't actually say it out loud. I'm saying it to this woman who was still there. And she's like, what? You said you wanted that gone. And I was like, oh, well, I do want it gone. She's like, well, obviously, how do you expect me to get rid of them? She's saying it much nicer though. And then she's like, maggots are going to eat it alive.
Maggots do.
And that's what she told me. And then I said, I don't like maggots. Like, this is weird. I mean, if this is what it takes, I'll do it. And then as soon as I said that, she's like, oh, would you like something easier? And then all of a sudden, they were little tiny Tonka trucks. They were still doing an excavation on my chest.
That's what you said. It was almost like your dad's equipment.
Yeah.
It was all of a sudden, all your dad's tractors and equipment and excavators were then working on your body.
And then she said, oh, this is going to start to hurt. Let's go back. And then we went back into another, basically the same scenario of like going through shit in my life. And like, I mean, everything. Like it was so crazy. And then the next day, that's when we did the San Pedro, which was the cactus. And that was also very interesting. But I mean, we did this. San Pedro is like, I would say, what for me was a little bit more life altering even than the ayahuasca. I felt like the ayahuasca was very cleansing and honestly like helped me get rid of a lot of shit that I was holding on to.
I remember you kept saying clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the words you used more than once when we were talking about was clarifying.
And the San Pedro was more of a connecting. Like, I mean, I had a hard time touching people's hands for a long time before that. And I mean, I'd gone through like therapy and all this stuff for it, and I could do it, but it was always uncomfortable. And like after that, I remember like being able to touch people and like actually hug them, as opposed to like.
This was all prior to Invita, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's probably a lot of what led you to the place that let you, I don't want to say experiment. That's the wrong word. Use alternative methods and combination of.
Yeah. I think that, and just like, I watched all my family members die. So I don't give a shit what it is. I'm going to figure out a way to help people live, you know, and everyone's going to die. But to me, I look at my mom, and my mom, like, I mean, she was insane. She did more in one day than most people do in her entire life. And one of the things I always thought about, well, what would my mom's life have been like if she wasn't handicapped from high school on, if she didn't have every health condition under the sun? Like, people like my mom make me like pissed off at people that do nothing. And so
Gotcha. Yeah.
I want to free people of the things that like hold them down, and whatever that is. And then that way we have a better world to live in. And you don't have shit like COVID that wrecks people over because they have like, you know, they want to live optimally because of what they're wanting to contribute to the world. Like, fuck this bullshit that we're doing now.
What do you think it's going to take for individuals to address themselves in such a manner? Because like you said, the only way that this is going to change is for people to face it and say, instead of doing nothing, like you're talking about, the people that piss you off that have good health and everything else and do nothing with it. What do you think it's going to take? Because even it seems an epidemic is not necessarily doing it. What's it going to take for everyone to kind of realize, like, the only way for everyone to be better is for everyone to take care of themselves and help others? Like, it's kind of, I guess that's the golden question.
I mean,
but
it has to be an inability to do nothing, unfortunately. Like, there's certain people that when a building is burning and they're watching the building burn, they see other people around, so they're just going to let the other people take care of it, right? I'm not saying that you should run into the fire and do whatever, but I'm saying there's an action that should happen versus just disregarding. I think there's a lot of people right now that can disregard very easily, even when something's right in front of their mind, their faces, you know, like, that's the problem. Then you have, like, and most of those people are the ones that sit at home to play video games all day. Sorry, gamers. But, like, those are the people that you have to realize there's shit to do. And if you're going to complain about something, you have to be willing to do something about it, in my opinion.
yeah,
Like, I very much so believe that. So unless you make it impossible for them to do nothing, they're not going to change. So basically, you're going to have to kill them off. I mean, that's the end of it. Or
that you got to kill off that mentality, or
truly give them no other option. So cut off the internet, cut off gaming, cut off reading, put them in an empty room, and make them sit with themselves. Because then they're going to realize, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be doing something.
Hey, that's close to what COVID's doing, except we got the internet to filler.
The filler.
As you said. But, I mean, and I get, like, you know, it'll drive Holly crazy sometimes, my girlfriend crazy sometimes, where I can't sit and relax if something needs done. Like, when I go to the cabin, like, we get there, everyone's having a good time, having a drink, getting ready to jump in, and I'm, like, moving wood or cutting shit or doing shit or fixing shit, and they're like, well, come relax. And it's like, the thing is, if I come sit down there and relax, I say this with quotation marks in my hands, I'm not going to be relaxed because there's shit I know needs done.
You're going to be less relaxed.
Yes, but once I get positive things, progressive things done, and I'm productive, then I'm like, I can enjoy that relaxation. Like you got to earn it, you know?
Exactly.
I don't,
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I still don't know how you do the fucking Spartan race, Mutter race. Like,
It changes your life, man.
yeah.
And you don't know how I do it. What the fuck? You wake up at like, I don't know. You don't even wake up because you don't go to bed, but like you wake up at like 1 a.m. to go hunting, to go kill something, walk 80,000 miles in the cold. You hate the cold.
I hate the
and
cold.
then you kill something and then you drag that animal back through all those conditions and you think I'm crazy?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you get a reward, but I technically get a reward
medal.
too.
You get a medal, I get a meal.
I mean, it's just like, I guess for me, and you get this too. It's like, it feeds my soul, man.
It is. Hardship and overcoming hardship
Yeah.
is rewarding.
Yeah.
It builds character, especially like you said, when you hit that point of breaking to where you're like, I can't do this anymore.
Yep.
And
But-
then when you just keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep going,
Yeah.
and if figuratively or literally, you get to the point where, you know
what
get
it
that
is?
second wind.
It's not even a second wind. Like, I figured this out. There is a point where you are so stripped down from everything else. Like there's nothing human about you really left other than your spirit, right?
Mm.
And that is what, there's second winds. This is not your second wind. This is like
This is
you're
where you say you gotta
literally-
find your heart.
you find you.
Yeah.
And I remember
How much
like,
heart do you have?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like there's not someone, something, some tragedy in your life that is enough to power you to keep going. That's when you find you. And that is what Tough Mudder, that world's toughest man, I found me. And that is like, I was like, oh shit, we gotta do some stuff now. Cause like, I don't know. And then this year, COVID willing, there's going to be another one and I'll be there. It's in Vegas and I guarantee you I'm going to just annihilate. I'm going to get 75 miles.
You're going to kick ass.
I know.
I have no doubt you will fucking kill it. I have no doubt.
Yeah. I might not be able to walk for like a month, but that's fine.
Hey, your biometrics recovery
BioStrap's
readings,
got me.
You may do better this year. But I mean, again, when you break yourself down that far, is our lighter dead?
I think our lighter's dead.
Shit.
Hold on. And is this it's not a white lighter. I was about to be like, what the fuck? Oh, here we go.
Got fire. Yeah, it'll be interesting to really see now that you'll be able to, break yourself down like you've always done, beat the hell out of yourself through these miserable conditions.
Yep.
What the difference is
And
going to
not
be.
be so stressed and working like 90 hours the week going into it.
Yeah.
That's where like, I think
You
about
can optimize you.
I can optimize me. And like, I can actually say I've never been able to fully offer myself to the world,
or yourself.
I
really
didn't even know
haven't.
myself.
I know. I probably one of the few that understands that.
Yeah.
So what do you tell people that want to optimize themselves? Where do they go? What should they do? Where should they start?
Well, I mean, not to sound cliche, but honestly, like you're not going to get anywhere unless you're willing to like actually monitor yourself beyond your perception of yourself. So that's why I think they should get BioStrap, like not to be a total plugger, but like it's the fucking best. Like I've looked, there's nothing else that even comes close. Like even there's Whoop Band and like that's great and all, but it's not as accurate. You only have one measure and whatever. Get that. Get a BioStrap and then start to take yourself seriously. Like if you say you want to be better and you want to complain about something, then you actually have to be willing to do something. So you're not going to be able to do everything that you want to do, but in reality, you probably don't want to do it anyway. So you just have to be able to get real with yourself. Those are the first two things you should do. And then start monitoring your shit and just get a BioStrap, man. And like watch what happens when you do stupid shit. Then you shouldn't do that stupid shit anymore. And you should start trying to do something else that somebody, maybe your grandma told you was healthy back in the day. Start doing that. And then that's your first step.
There you go. Get started.
Yeah, just get started and be happy. Like be happy, connect with people, be nice.
That's what I cannot wait to see. What's going to come about in the future is the connection when they can quantify
Yeah.
mood, happiness, perception, and physical characteristics and manifestations.
Yep.
I mean, that's one thing I heard a long time ago, and I try to always remember is if you can't change a situation, change the way you see it.
Yep.
And it can change everything
Exactly.
by trying to look at things different.
You've got to look at it differently, like, because there's only two things in theory. It can be okay or not okay, and sometimes things aren't okay, but you're still there. So technically, you're still okay.
Still okay.
Still okay, but be better.
Be better.
Well, I know you got to get ready to go. This
Yeah.
has been fucking awesome.
I can't believe you have a podcast.
It's kind of crazy, and it's organized and fancy, like it's kind of legit and shit. Like,
You're using buttons.
yeah,
I'm really blown away.
bunch of glowing ones, but don't just be okay, be better. I guess that's the point of this podcast is, while you're alive, live, do what makes you happy. It's going to make you healthier. Ashley Grimmel, one of my favorite people, brilliant. And I still think you're going to do things to change the world. Anyone else that's interested in this, Podium Dreams, check them out, and Grimmel Biometrics to come.
And if you do get a BioStrap, I guess you can. I think I have a code. It's Grimmel10, Grimmel 10, and that'll get you 10% off. So that's kind of fun. I never had a code before. All right,
Grimmel 10, you heard it, kills it.